This is my favorite scene of the film. It's so poetic, and there's no actors, which isn't a good sign. CGI can be more moving than a scene between people. But this is really such a beautiful scene.
I remember the first time I saw this, just my mouth was just open the entire time. I can't believe this. I just think this is like a work of art, this sequence. It's so beautiful. And it's emotional. I mean, it's amazing.
Chris Young did a beautiful score for this. And Thomas modeled for this repeatedly on video on the floor of some office building with me.
I have to admit, we would be shooting, and right before we'd break for lunch, many days, the call would come in on the walkie that Sam wanted to go through the Birth of the Sandman sequence during lunch for Spencer and Scott. And I have to admit, I periodically hoped that call wouldn't come in on the walkie because I went through this so many times. But you know what? Whatever contribution is there, I do think it's one of the reviewers or one of the critics said that the entire sequence is like a Henry Moore sculpture, which I thought was a beautiful artistic reference.
So many people contributed to this sequence, including conceptual artist E.J. Kreiser, our costume designer, James Atchison, who worked on not just the costume, but the look of the Sandman. And working with many sculptors and sketch artists helped determine that the creature would have negative space, like a castle that had fallen out, and that more than anything contributed to the look of it really being built out of sand, and how the face and the arms would look. And then we had great animators and storyboard artists all contributing to this. There are literally hundreds of animators on this particular sequence, millions of grains of sand to be manipulated under the watchful eye of Spencer Cook. My favorite, I love him in this scene, his look after she snaps at him here.
Don't give me the horse thing. Try and understand how I feel.
Such a boy thing. Oh my God, I recognize that look.
I think all men know that moment. I didn't do anything. And I'm sorry that I didn't do anything. I don't know what you're yelling at me about.
Who came up with the idea to kind of have Peter Parker get caught up in, his own ego and self-importance and the black suit and all that? When did that first come up, or who came up with it? Or
well, in a separate story than the black suit,
yeah,
Ivan and I had him fall into the sin of pride.
Got it.
It was all about how pride won't allow him to be wrong, and how it makes him look at Flint Marko as a villain and himself as a hero, and how he's going to take on a grander sense of right and wrong and the grays of this world of morality by the end of the piece. Then the black suit came into it, and it was used to be a metaphor to try and carry that. It got very messy, but to try and carry that idea.
I just want to say really quickly that the gentleman that was just taking my photograph, he told me when I met him that he was a magician for, I think, my second grade birthday party, or like when I was like 7 years old for my birthday party.
Oh, wow. He was great. I loved him in that scene.
Oh my God, this is so terrifying for me to watch now, because now I know that I was pregnant when I did all of this, and it's just like completely reckless.
Not only that, but we're doing all these terrible things to you, and you were letting us with the harness. And then I look over and your father's standing next to me.
Oh, no.
Oh, hello, sir. I'm so embarrassed.
Oh, no. He was doing post-production for Da Vinci Code while we were shooting this, and he kept wandering by the set. He was so into your directing and so into this movie.
I'm such a big fan of your father's films. I was really nervous and self-conscious when he was on the set.
Oh, no. Well, I was just like, don't you have your own movie to handle right now? Like, why are you on this set? But he was so into it.
Now, I gotta say, I love the sound in this sequence. All the sound effects stuff. I mean, that is just awesome. It really elevates the action.
Sound was designed by Paul Otteson. He also designed the second picture. And we had fantastic mixers in Greg Russell and Kevin O'Connell, who mixed all three of the Spider-Man films.
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. It really adds to the whole movie and the experience of watching the movie.
Hey, you're not going to talk about how awesome your brother is, but he's a great guy and a really funny actor. I know you're dying right now. Me saying this, but I had a really fun time hanging out with him this whole week. And, you know, JK's amazing, too.
Ted was great, and I think both everybody had more fun stuff to do in this movie.
Yeah, especially Elizabeth. She had some really great stuff.
Oh, yeah, she really did.
She had so many good ideas, Elizabeth Banks, that I couldn't even put in the picture because the story was so big, you know. But she really had some great character ideas about where her and Peter Parker could have progressed to in real subtle ways. But the story was so overloaded, we just couldn't explore them to the depth that we wanted to. It's great comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, that character is Peter Parker's first love or girlfriend, right?
That's right.
Man, Sam, New York City is filled with so many attractive women.
I'm a married man, so I don't. I hadn't noticed.
I noticed that actually. I think the second time I was watching it, I was like, wow, all the extras are just beautiful women.
One of the appeals of the Spider-Man comic books is always a lot of good girl watching in them.
That was a nice little moment there with Stanley.
With Stanley, yes, before.
Oh, yeah.
This is Mr. Paxton, Bill Paxton's father. I remember sitting in an incarnation of that set on part 2. You were talking about how I would have a whole team of female goblins that we were going to call the Gobletts, and I would be the top of in the penthouse, and Harry was going to be kind of a swinging party guy villain.
We had talked about that. Yeah, James Atchison really liked that idea. I actually have designs of those girls, believe it or not.
I always felt this police officer, once he gets up there and he's going with his shovel and he just like digs it into the sand, is like a bit aggressive.
Like what?
Well, he's a bit aggressive because, I mean, he could just like pierce your skull or something. He doesn't know you're like a big super villain right now.
Talk about poking the bear, though. He really...
Right.
They did a really fine job with the CG. And Thomas gave us really good models with all those dots on his face, you know, those motion capture dots.
Now, those are real cars getting flipped around and stuff, right?
Yeah, Dan Bradley rigged all of this up for me along with our mechanical effects team, John Fraser and his group, and took basically weeks to rig up these 30-some automobiles to go and spin and pop in a sequence at a speed that would make it seem as though the CG sand that was added later was triggering them. Made sure it was very safe. This film was being written in so many versions, so many different ways, and we had to all start working on it before it was ready. Because this film had a release date, and we all had to work toward delivering that picture. It was such a massive undertaking that it had to have a release date planned, and all hundreds, in fact thousands of people and stages secured in advance that simply had to be shot at a particular time, ready or not. That's why all the actors' contributions were so important in making this thing work.
That's Grant Curtis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There he goes.
Oh, I think he was
suffering the wrath of a sand fist.
He was pulling sand out of his ears for like 6 months later.
I guess you haven't heard. I'm the sheriff around these parts.
It's a great line, man.
Tobey came up with that line.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's something that was fun for him, a little cocky.
Yeah, it's a little, yeah.
You're surprised that someone's not aware of him. He's so full of himself.
It was a good opportunity. I think it's hard to find opportunity to build story and character when in action sequences in a suit. So I thought it was, a kind of a natural opportunity for that to kind of advance what was happening with Peter.
You always do that. In every moment you can contribute to the character where he's at, express it in a realistic, good way, you're there. Also, if you have another line you can add for yourself, you seem to come up with it, too.
I'm always up for that.
The part gets bigger.
Now, I think Bruce Campbell is just fantastic in this.
Yeah.
I loved working with you two guys. You really, you're not afraid to try things. That's what's great about you.
Yeah.
You did all sorts of different versions of this scene in case Some of it didn't work. He's wanted a piece of it, but not all of it. Different bits, different gags. I love the fact you're willing to play like that, Tobey.
Oh, it was fun. It was great with him, and I think at first it was like a more antagonistic type of relationship, and we, through working on it, I think decided that they would kind of like each other.
That's right. You had to make sure that you weren't just, you had to find the right reaction, the right relationship with him. You kind of found it during the shooting of this. He's always playing someone that tortures Tobey in these movies. He's in all three of them.
How'd that get in there?
I love that off camera the entire time there's this whole Keystone Cop dynamic with Bruce Campbell
Yeah.
and the waiters. It really keeps this comedic undercurrent that I think is very entertaining.
I think that was really ambitious and pretty, really pulled off in an amazing way that I wasn't sure about. I asked Sam, I was like, are you sure this is going to work? And Sam said, no, I'm not, but we're going to give it a shot. And I think it just came off so well.
Hey, Tobey, just for fun,
Just a girl in my class.
do you think that Peter has ever thought about it, or do you think he's completely innocent right now?
You mean with Gwen?
Yeah. Because there's something. You know
I
what
think
mean?
he feels a little guilty. I don't think he's done anything that would technically be called a betrayal. But I think he's had a friendlier relationship than he's copped to Mary Jane.
Well, in that very first scene in the classroom, her smile and she's kind of fawning, and you see him bask in that for just the briefest moment, and I think that sets this scene up really well.
Yeah.
Maybe he admired her sweater a little bit more than he should have.
This is the man who killed your husband.
It turns out it was this man. He was also in George of the Jungle.
Yeah, by the way, I meant to say something. You were so good in that.
Thank you, Toph.
July 1st, 2006 it was.
I remember we were in the Newark lounge, and Sam tried to order a drink, and they told us it was too early. I don't know why I was quite amused by that. No, sir, we are not going to allow you to drunken yourself.
It was too late is what it was. Cliff Robertson is such a trooper and a gentleman. It's been an honor to work with this fella throughout the pictures. In the brief scenes with Tobey in the first movie, he added so much credibility to their relationship.
Yeah, I've always loved working with him, and he's always contributed so much. He's brought so much more to the character than I think he was given. You know, he just brought such life to it and always had great ideas.
Sam, how did you create the movements for Black Spidey? Like, saying, because he's obviously stronger, but it's like such a... because Spider-Man is supposed to be able to pretty much do anything. And so how did you kind of do that?
Well, all of the movements of Spider-Man, for starters, are really based on the illustrations of the great Marvel artists. Mm-hmm. And then I would use those to show them to the animator as poses, keyframes of how I wanted him to look. And then we would carry that into the storyboards. All the fellas would look at those art poses from the comics and understand this is how Spider-Man looked. And then great animators like Spencer Cook would start to develop a style of movement from one pose to the next that was still within that body language that the illustrations of the comic book suggested. And then as far as Black Spidey then, we wanted to make him a more extreme, a little bit nastier, a little bit, not the thing that Topher plays later, but in that direction because he's affected by the symbiote. So I asked Spencer to come up with a language of movement for him, and he did some tests, and we gave notes back and forth. And it was a more extreme, slightly nastier version of what Spider-Man would do.
Basically, Spider-Man, classic Spider-Man, is not looking to hurt anybody. And the black-suited Spidey is just much more aggressive and actually wants to give Sandman a thumping. Wants to go go get Flint Marko.
Yeah, he's in touch with his anger. This was a gigantic movie to shoot. I remember we had like 5 stages going at once, and these gigantic sets on each of the stages, from the Daily Bugle to this fantastic sewer set. We had 2 really fine production designers, Michael Riva and Neil Spisak. Leslie Pope was their right-hand woman. And so many artists designing these sets and painting them and constructing them. It was a massive crew. And then this was built to contain these thousands of gallons of water, making it a really really difficult set to build, to be able to withstand that pressure of that flood that John Fraser and his team cooked up. It was built in the dump tank here at Columbia Pictures.
So Sam, it seems like since part 2 we were I remember discussing what would happen in part 3, and a lot of the things were, the broader elements stayed the same, but a lot of the details changed between 2 and then when we started 3, and then even on 3 we were still fine-tuning a lot of the things. What was a lot of the thought process that went into the final result?
You mean why the changes?
Yeah, and what they were, and
one of the major changes was that once the story was written, and it was very ambitious in and of itself. It needed a lot of paring down and concentration of ideas and elimination of others. But before that took place, there was a mandate that we put in, a desire to put in Venom, because the kids who are fans of Spider-Man so love that character.
Yeah, I think it's the most popular villain, I think.
So I think before this...
I mean, I don't want to get competitive, but yeah, that's
I mean, the comic book version, yeah.
So I think the reason there were changes late into the process was that the script was undergoing, while it was trying to find itself, the movement of the main characters, the villains were changing. And once Venom comes into something, it demands so many changes, because then you're telling the story of Eddie Brock and his relationship with Peter and Jameson, and in this case Gwen Stacy, and his competition, and that element has to be dramatized. And then he brings with him the idea of we have to now tell this stuff that comes in from outer space, or however it would come in, the black goo, and how it affects Peter, and how Peter would shed it, and how it would come upon Eddie. It has so much story material with it that it just put the whole screenplay into, I think, an upheaval for the longest time. And then shooting began before it had actually settled out.
Right.
So I think that's the reason why there were so many changes. It just rippled through everything.
Okay, this was probably the most fun scene for me, because it just was very relaxed and happy for a Spider-Man movie, and especially for MJ, because I'm always sad and dealing with something.
Actually, a lot of work went into it. I had to go to culinary school for a day to learn how to make and flip omelets, and then I had a twist lesson.
It feels like you probably worked for a long time on this twist lesson.
I mean, I do a lot of twisting when I'm just with my friends, but you want a more professional feel.
Right.
Well, you took your twisting on camera to a whole new level.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm so curious about this. Was this planned?
Oh yeah, this seemed like a real moment.
Sam?
Yes.
It was planned?
Yes.
That was so good.
He was supposed
Acting.
to look really smooth making that omelet, and then
I actually never dropped an omelet when I tried, but they had to make me drop it.
Now, do you guys feel like you were betraying Peter there?
I guess so. Sam was horrified. He was so uncomfortable on set. I think he identifies with Peter too much.
As I would tend to take sides with Peter, I get rubbed the wrong way a little bit with that.
Yes, I understand that. I think I do too. I think what happened was they were always lovers. Their story almost predates Peter's relationship with her.
Oh, come on. Even in the first movie, the guy makes a move on her when Peter was already after her. I got issues dating back to the first picture.
I know. His father was not a great role model. He tries to be the best friend he can with a improper upbringing. His father never instilled a great sense of morality in him. He's just a passionate guy.
So we're just a product of our parents? We're not responsible for ourselves or our actions?
I think he's responsible. I think he just got swept up in the moment, though, with his old love.
That's good. I'm going to try to use that in my life.
Well, I think so. In a strange way, I understand that point of view because we see Harry come into the hospital room and Peter is holding hands with Mary Jane when he knew that they had an ongoing relationship.
That's
I
true.
think he just let,
Peter had...
Sorry,
Snap.
Yeah, well, I even playing that scene, and I remember it, I felt like I was doing like the appropriate thing by pulling my hand away, but felt betrayed at the same time.
Like you were betraying?
No, like I had to be appropriate by pulling my hand away, but it was a mixed kind of feeling because I felt like I shouldn't be in that position anyways. Like I had been betrayed in order to be in that position in the first place.
Because
you had those levels.
Because you had already said. What, claimed her because you like expressed an interest in the science lab and so she was yours?
Well, actually, I had been in love with her as stated since I was 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, he got you, dude. It's like in the opening credits, dude, of the first one.
Well, I guess Harry didn't have that chance. He had just started attending the school.
Oh, the cool new guy.
And I have to say, Harry was a little slimy in that scene. He started using Peter's own lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Any port in a storm. He's trying to survive with the girl. Use the material.
Hey, when you guys were making the first film, this is kind of a weird question, but did you guys know what was going to happen or how excited everyone was, or did it really take you by surprise when it came out? I mean, everyone knew it was going to be an event movie, but...
I remember seeing Harry Potter. The first Harry Potter was released and made tons of money in its opening weekend, and it was such a phenomenon. Like, it was just everywhere, all over the kind of, the news. And I was watching it going, man, that's crazy. I mean, it must be wild to be a part of something like that. And at the time we were making Spider-Man 1, I didn't really connect it that would be us in a few short months. But I did, like you said, it's like you could definitely feel the anticipation and people were excited and talking about it. But when it happened, it was kind of surreal and mind blowing. Like that weekend was wild.
I remember seeing you on the Tonight Show, like right after that first weekend, and like I don't know, all that Jay Leno's asking, like, did you go to theaters and watch it and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been paralyzing that week.
It was fun mostly, although I was a little surprised just by the immediacy of the shift, of attention. It was like, I was recognized here and there prior to that, and then all of a sudden, like, there was paparazzi following me to lunch. You know what I mean? It was like, oh no, what happened? But it was cool just being a part of the event of the movie, and that's what was fun. We did go to theaters and to hear people cheer and laugh together, to have this group experience, and that's what was fulfilling and made me feel good about being a part of that.
I mean, I think that was the important thing of what the Amnesia bit did, is it enabled us to rekindle the friendship, and you got to see what it was made of, so that these scenes are not just a generic villain and superhero fighting. It's really just two friends, and you really can feel their history, and so the fight scenes mean much more.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye. That was Sam's idea, the right?
That was actually Ivan's line.
Oh, that was Ivan's line?
Yeah.
The concept of bringing some jazz to his character and that kind of old school speak. That was you and Ivan?
Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks. Topher, I really like the way you delivered this next piece.
Oh, thanks. I really like that "you want religion, get forgiveness" line. It's kind of like not easily connected to me going into the church, but I think it was like the second time I saw it, really picking up on that. I don't know if it's meant to be connected or not, but I really like that line.
Yes, it was. When Alvin wrote it, that is what he meant.
Dude, this is my favorite part of this movie, is you doing this cookies thing, man. I just think this is so hilarious, the way you talk down to her. It's like... When the first time I saw it, I just cracked up. couldn't care less about what this guy's saying.
It was a lot of fun, but it really is a solution to a problem we had, which is we had to have this scene with Doc Connors giving Peter this information, but we didn't think Peter would care so much about what Doc Connors had to say. And it was supposed to be like a scene, you know, where Peter's listening to Doc Connors. So this was our solution, I mean, to that problem.
I love that she loves it. I think that's the best part.
It's really good. It probably came from a question you had about would the character really do that? You know, would he really be interested in this even? And then the scene became, well, where would the character be? He couldn't give a crap.
But this was something that you kind of put in late in the game, right, Sam? The whole montage was up in the air for a while with the walking down the street and the cookie scene and all this stuff, wasn't it?
Yes. There were a lot of things that we had to do and wanted to communicate. And then Ivan and I one day in the writing department combined them into a montage. We were thinking about the second picture also at that point, thinking, oh, this will be an interesting counterpoint to the whipped lame place he'd been to in the second picture.
Was singing in the rain and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
I always thought of Tobey in these scenes as like an angry, dorky rock star because he has this eyeliner on, his hair is all shagged out, and he's like very 70s about it and doing weird dance moves. Wow. There's not much to say after that move.
I like that you went up there and did that.
Yeah.
It's really entertaining.
There's a geek flair to it, but you actually have some good moves.
Well, thank you, sir. The geek flair was not an accident.
Oh my God.
Had to add that. That was the toughest part of the whole thing. Sam actually kept saying, you gotta bring the cool down.
No. I remember that part.
Oh, you don't remember that, Sam? Find us some shade. I love how you can never quite tell how the ladies are reacting to Peter. Like, are they repulsed? Are they turned on? Or a little bit of both? I mean,
I think it's like real life, a little bit of both.
Yeah. I love doing this scene. It was so much fun. And, I mean, just our dialogue and stuff I'm saying at the table here. It was fun finding the tone for that and just working with you, Bryce. And then our prep for it, too, with the... it
was so much fun.
The choreographers and stuff. I was like really not sure about this whole thing at first, what it was going to be like, but ended up being a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Bryce, you were great in that scene, I thought, at the table with him. I just love your performance with him.
Thank you.
You're really concerned and earnest. And I love that ad-lib you guys did walking to the club itself. That was all just you guys voicing your own concerns and your attitudes. That was great.
Tobey, you practiced for months on the piano, right? I saw you practicing in your room.
I did practice a lot just to... I mean, I still couldn't really play it.
Well, you learned to play that part of the piece.
Yeah, I learned to play that part of the piece.
This scene took literally like a good 2 weeks.
I love how there's so many different genres in this movie. Little pastiches like musicals, and you have action, comedy, drama, and they all seem to be like genres from the 50s.
I love that, how you do that. There's like a little zoom in with the wind blow there.
Oh, that was Sam. I could not believe that when that happened, because here's this huge film, and then Sam just picks up this little piece of cardboard and just stands by the camera and just like keeps flipping it. I was like, isn't there something more high-tech you could do in place of this instead of the director taking this over?
You guys both did a great job with the choreographer. That was Marguerite Derricks and her assistant, really toning it down, making it elegant. Tobey was making sure that it didn't go like to outrageous proportions of a Spider-Man dance, but still had enough wild stuff to say he was being irresponsible and risking his identity just to hurt this girl. I thought that was a really good balance he came up with.
It was great.
Yeah, Tobey, you're a really good dancer. Because the way they would do it is they would have us work with professional dancers, like each one of us, and then we would be paired together. And he was right up there. He was really, really good.
He has moves.
Yeah, he does.
It's so weird because, you know, Kirsten and I are so estranged right now. We're so distant, the most we've been, right? Then, of course, there's this ugliness.
I thought it was great that Kevin Feige, who is the president of Marvel Studios, and Avi Arad, the former president, allowed us to take the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker into such extreme places. It's kind of risky for them, and they, in the interest of trying to make the best picture, they really went for it.
I think that's what's so wonderful about these films is the complexities of the characters. That it just doesn't rely on the action. That its appeal fundamentally is from the story and from the various story arcs.